Rev up your engines!
Kino says, I'm thinking about buying an unsouped-up 2011 Honda Civic Type R with 24,000 miles for $5,000. Those are well-made vehicles. 24,000 miles, they can prove it's real for $5,000. That would be a heck of a deal, because you said it's an unsouped-up one. You don't want to buy one that some kid bought and started putting stuff on, didn't know what he was doing, and then raced the heck out of it. But the problem is, guys that buy the Civic Type Rs often beat the heck out of them. It could be all worn out. Definitely want to have a mechanic check that out before any money changes hands to tell you what kind of shape he's in. But 24,000 miles isn't much for a Honda. They make great engines. And if you can really get that thing for $5,000 and the guy's the original owner, that can be a really sweet deal. You know, you just want to get it checked out to make sure that it's still in really good shape, because it's hard to find those things anyways. And with 24,000 miles on it, I mean, the engine's not even broken in, so that would be a fantastic deal, assuming it hasn't been wrecked, flooded, damaged, and the mechanic gives the okay. Nigel John, Scotty, what's the optimal first car to buy for one 18-year-old daughter going to college out of state? Okay, are we talking new or used? If you're talking new, you don't want to spend a fortune, you can get a Toyota Corolla. They can run forever. But if you're talking used and you want a little bit nicer and a tiny bit safer, you could get a Toyota Camry. They can run forever. But if you're talking brand new, yeah, just go get a brand new Toyota Corolla, and they can run for a really long time, and they're safe. They got airbags all over the place in them. So, and especially if you're getting a new one, it's not the old Takata airbags, it's the new ones that they haven't had any problems with, at least yet. So I'd say Toyota Corolla on that one. Sticks Future said, will the automatic transmission last 200,000 miles in a Volvo XC60 models 2010 to 14? I doubt it. I've never seen one go that far. All of my customers that had those, well before that, the transmissions went out, and they either spent anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 having them rebuilt, or they got rid of the cars and said, I've had it with that car. I'm not going to put any more money into it. That's one of the most least reliable things in those vehicles are the automatic transmissions. That's what generally finishes a Volvo out for people. The Swedes have always made great engines, and they actually made great standard transmissions, but their automatic transmissions, the earlier ones were kind of GM copies, and then they made their own, but that's always been the weak point of Volvos, their automatic transmissions. Like I say, I've never seen one that had more than 200,000 miles on it, and my own customers that hadn't either been rebuilt or they just got rid of the cars because they had problems. 90s guy says, Scotty, my 97 Honda Civic has trouble starting lately. The car cranks but almost never starts. When I do get it to start, it usually runs for a while, but second gear tends not to have enough power. Battery's good, wiring's good, fuses. What do you think it could be? Okay, it's a 97 Honda Civic. That thing is old as a hill. It's what, 23 years old now. First thing you want to do is change the fuel filter. Could be a clogged fuel filter. After that, pressure test the fuel pump. Could be weak. It's so old. The main thing on those are the fuel injectors. It's so old. Try everything else that I just said, and it wasn't that. Have a guy like me put his pressure cleaning machine on the fuel rail system and run pure cleaner through the fuel injectors for about an hour to clean the fuel injectors. A lot of times that will do it, and then it'll go perfectly fine. That's just age on those things. The fuel injectors won't spray right, because you say crank, crank, crank. Then when it does start, it runs okay. Generally, it means they're not getting enough fuel in them. Now, that is a 97 Civic. You also want to check the distributor, the ignition system. First thing you want to do is put a spark checker on any of the spark plugs. First thing in the morning when it's cranking, not starting, watch it. If it's not sparking, replace the distributor. The distributors eventually go bad on those things. You can buy a brand new one aftermarket for like $150 and just replace the distributor. So when it doesn't start, check it. If there's no spark to the spark plug, just replace the whole distributor assembly. I've changed out hundreds of them over the years on the older Civics. Caleb Sharp 1291 says, Scotty, an '06 Ford Taurus SE with 168,000 miles. You go to start the car, there's a very loud ticking sound. It goes away when it warms up. You got some bad hydraulic lifters. In those vehicles, the hydraulic lifters automatically adjust your valves, so you never have to adjust the valves. It's done automatically with oil pressure inside the lifters. When you shut the car off and it sits for any period of time, a lot of the oil will drain out of the lifters when they're worn. When they're not worn, they don't. When they're worn, they will. So then when you start it up, they're kind of dry with air in them. And then they clack until the oil pressure builds up, fills them with oil, then they stop clacking. An expensive job to replace them all. Let's say you got a V6, 4 valves per cylinder, 24 hydraulic lifters. Costs a lot of money to replace them all. If the noise goes away, once it warms up, a lot of people drive them that way for years. If it starts clacking away when it's even warmed up, then you're going to have to do something about it. But a lot of guys will live with it when those hydraulic lifters start clacking. Especially at higher speeds, yeah, you're going to have to start fixing things. But if it only does it on startup, you might also try full synthetic oil because that flows better. A lot of times that'll keep them from clacking. It'll lubricate them better so they won't make any noise in the first place. I've seen that happen. Gee, Scotty, wanted to share you a story. I had a 1988 Corolla, took it in, and they said they're going to put a 500 cold crank battery in. And I said, hey, could they put a stronger one in? And they said, nah, you got to use this one. So then later, I put a 640 cranking battery in it. But they won't swap my 550 crank battery. I had to pay money for that. They BS'd you in the first time. Cold cranking is the cranking power that a battery has to start your engine. The higher the cold cranking, the better it is for starting your car. You got a big engine and a little starter, right? The more power you send to that little starter, the better it's going to start. Now, it's not like you're putting a 24-volt battery to run a 12-volt starter. It's still the 12-volt battery. It just has more amperage, so it has better cranking power. It doesn't hurt anything. The starter is only going to use the amount of amperage that it needs to run itself. Otherwise, let's say you got a 550 cold crank amp and you turn on your windshield wipers. They don't use many amps. Well, they only use the amps it needs, so it doesn't matter how strong the battery is as long as it's still a 12-volt battery. Personally, myself, I do that with all my cars. Toyota's, Lexus, I buy a much higher rated battery than the vehicle came. The reason they put smaller batteries in the cars when they build them is because it's cheaper to make them that way. When I was a young mechanic, they put bigger batteries in cars because they weren't thinking, how can we make these cars cheaper to make more profit? Today, when they build them, they generally put in the smallest battery they can get away with. So especially if you live up north or Alaska or somewhere where it's really cold, put a bigger battery in your car for the winter or for all time because it will last longer. You're going to pay a little bit more, and of course there's space limitations. You're never going to fit 1,000 cold crank and ampere Mercedes battery in a Toyota. There's no room for it unless you modified stuff. You can get the biggest one that'll fit in there and you're better off. 94 says, Scotty, I need to get a car I can use for 2 or 3 years. I'm between an Audi A4 2011, Mercedes-Benz 2008 C300. What are your thoughts? Well, on that, you definitely would want to go for the Mercedes-Benz C300. The Audi A4s are endless money pits as they age. Now, you're talking about Mercedes-Benz. Those cars cost a lot of money to maintain. The C300, they sold a lot of them. It's very common. You know, the basic C300 model, in Europe, they use them for taxi cabs and stuff. They can really go a long time. It's a Mercedes-Benz. I'd go Lexus or something for you, but if that's your absolute only choice between those two, you'd want to get the Mercedes but pay a mechanic to check it out to tell you what kind of shape that the thing is in. Just realize it's a 12-year-old Mercedes-Benz. They can be very, very expensive to maintain. And if I were you, I would look elsewhere. If you can find an older Lexus instead, you know, they're excellent cars and you're not going to have the maintenance problems that you can have with the Mercedes as they age. Now, at least you're wise enough. You say you only want it for 2 or 3 years, because I wouldn't even think about any of those cars if you said you want to buy it and drive it forever, because it would cost a fortune. Here we go. You can't argue with these statistics. Michigan, in some areas, rated the speed limit on highways to 75 miles an hour, and no surprise, it's led to more speeding, crashes, and injuries. People are always arguing, saying, oh, well, you know, that doesn't affect what happens if you raise the speed limit. Well, obviously, it does. Here in Texas, years ago, they had all kinds of arguments when they lowered the speed limit to 55, and then they argued and they put it back up again. And nobody ever studies that. I wish somebody would. But in Michigan, they saw a rise of 17.2% in crashes and 18.9% in injuries on the roads that had a 75-mile-an-hour speed limit, bumped up to 75 in 2016. Everybody's always trying to blame it on somebody else. And the naysayers here, they're saying that the real problem is people were already driving 75 miles an hour in the 65 zone. And now that it's 75, they're driving 85 miles an hour. At least that's what they're trying to claim. Well, regardless, raising the speed limit up higher and they're getting more accidents, it caused it. Regardless of what speed they're actually going, they raised it up to 75. Now they have more accidents, more fatalities, more injuries. Obviously, it wasn't such a smart thing to do. Especially, we're talking about Michigan, snow and ice. Hey, here in Texas, around Houston, very rarely does it even freeze, so you can drive on the road, no real problems. But you live where it snows and there's ice, especially black ice, you do not want really high speed limits. On dry pavement, you got a lot better chance, but at least a third of the year there, it's probably below freezing. Not a smart move to go really fast when it's icy and snowing outside. And even though, of course, cars are more advanced than they used to be with collisions avoidance systems and stuff, well, obviously, look, it's not working. Either that or the people in Michigan don't have any money. I had an uncle in Flint. He's long gone, but I mean, that economy went down the toilet. So maybe they're all driving old junkers that don't have collision avoidance systems. I don't know. All I know is they raised the speed limit. Now there's more crashes. So things, they may be complicated if you look at all the different parameters, but there's one simple thing here. You raise the speed limit like that, you get more wrecks. Maybe not such a smart idea to raise it up there. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.